All right, we're ready. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Patricia.
I'm Jalen.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Mariam.
And for this week's discussion post, it's asking, why was the creation of an Asian American identity necessary? What were the historical factors that made the creation of the term Asian American and the creation of Asian American studies possible? So, who wants to start the first question?
I can start. So I wrote down that the creation of the term Asian American identity was necessary so that they can kind of like come together and like make a change so that they could have a voice. And in Russell Jong, I think that's how you say his last name, in his article, he talked about how in the 1960s, Asian American students realized that conditions that they were being faced with, in addition to what their parents faced with back then, so they had like poor living conditions and they had a lack of social and health services and unequal educational opportunities. So like they were kind of confused because their history was unknown, so they didn't know much about their background and origin. And especially since they weren't taught that in school, they were kind of like confused. So they kind of questioned their existence and their purpose. And even though they were like born here or they became citizens, they were still considered Asians. So it was like they were American, but then not American at the same time. And they were also called like Oriental and model minority. And model minority seems like a good term because it's like you're a model, meaning that like people look up to you. But their definition of a model minority was that they didn't complain about discrimination and they kind of just faced it and worked to overcome it. So I think that it just made them more aware of their situation and how they needed to kind of like come together to bring change.
I agree that they were called like Oriental, so it's like they were still like immigrants. So to show that they're different, they had to like they had to call themselves Asian Americans.
Yeah, it was all kind of just like a matter of fitting in with everyone else and like being accepted.
But like the term Asian American also like differentiated them from other groups. So like some African Americans, some American Americans who like struggled with their rights and all that. So I think that term was definitely necessary at that time because they had like their own voice to speak out for their own little Asian American communities.
Yeah.
What about the historical factors that led to Asian American studies being possible?
Oh, it was like in the colleges, a lot of Asian American college students were like saying, "Oh, we need to be taught about our like ethnicity and history." So they protested a lot to get like some type of ethnic study in their own college. Like Berkeley did it, UCLA did it.
I think it was like San Francisco too.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah,
Like it
that's
was like a
true.
lot of Bay Area.
Mhm.
Yeah, there was a lot of activism in like the 50s and 60s. It was saying, and it created a culture of reclaiming pride in the racially oppressed.
Mhm.
Oh, and also in the article they said that like about 1.3 million of the population were like Asian Americans, and like with that much people, they still weren't like treated, equally, especially with like the students not having given opportunity of higher education like the other students were.
Mhm.
And then it was like the 50s and 60s was also the time of the coming of age of the second and third generation of Americans of Asian descent. So they were all like grown up now, basically. And they knew like they actually had a voice now.
And I think the civil rights movement played in a really big factor into the like creation of Asian American studies because there was like a whole bunch of groups created. I think like third world country, I don't know, it's like TF something that their group also protested with the civil rights movement to get more ethnic studies in colleges and like equal rights for like all minorities.
Mhm. Adding on to that, there were also like the Black Power movement and the women's liberation movement and also environmental movement. And I think those kind of movements just help push and inspire Asian Americans to unite and to address their own racial status and identity as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and like having that Asian American voice definitely, I think, helped them with the, forming the Asian American studies. They were able to like rally out together as one, banding together against like all these people that are against them. So I think that was like definitely a big, huge factor in that thing. Do you guys have anything else to add on to that question?
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
okay, go ahead, bro. um, it was. I thought it was cool that like the college gave like the Asian American students like liberty to like choose their like professors and like like it's like they plan out their academics and what they're being taught. I thought that was really like cool of like independence and like trustworthiness for the college students.
I wanted to add like in his article he talked about how in 1968 the Black Student Union's Third World Liberation Front won the establishment of the Educational Opportunity Program office on campuses and increase in social admissions, but then SF state attempted to remove a lecturer in Black Studies who was an advocate for the Black Power movement. And even with all of those like kind of like barriers, they still pushed harder to kind of like get those classes. And in November 6, 1968, they went on a strike that lasted 5 months. And they were able to gain a lot of ethnic study classes, and even students were allowed to take 17 different Asian American study courses. So I thought it was pretty cool that they like still continued to fight even though there were so many like barriers holding them back.
Yeah, and also like just to add on, it wasn't just Asians fighting for them. Like it was also like they had like African Americans and like some white people too. So I just thought that was like good.
Are y'all set on that question?
I think we answered it.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're gonna move on to the film Who Killed Vincent Chin. So first question asks, what was the background or context of the murder of Vincent Chin? How are socio-economic issues related to racism?
I guess I'll start it. So like the background and context of it was Vincent Chin went to like this like a bar slash like strip club type of thing,
It was a violent.
and um, the I think the boss of the whole establishment, he came in and he thought like Vincent was making like a ruckus, and he told him like, "Yo, you need to calm down," and then he called him a bleep word, and Vincent was like, "I'm not a bleep," and then they started a brawl, and then Vincent uh, punched the boss and left the establishment, and the boss and the stepson ran like chased him, like, and I think it was in front of like a McDonald's or something, and like Vincent was on the street because he like was running away and he fell, and like they just started beating him up. The son like held him down, and then the like stepfather just started beating him with the bat, and that's what the gist of happened.
Mm-hmm. And like how the stepfather Ron and Michael, I think that was his name, like they were saying, oh yeah, we pleaded guilty, like yeah, but I think in their heads they believed that they weren't guilty in this sort of way because they were thinking that like, oh, I didn't start the fight, he did because he pushed me down first, and like that kind of like attitude. I don't know. It's just kind of weird in that way.
Yeah, like even though like they pleaded guilty to it, and even though like say Vincent started the fight, there was no reason for like them to like kill him because first like they chased him and like instead of like just beating them up like with punches and stuff like that, he actually had a Ron had a bat and like beated him to death. I feel like that was a little
Yeah, like
excessive.
yeah, he beat him to death while he was also held defenseless by the son. Like someone was holding him down so he could like beat him. So it just like it wasn't fair at all.
And what was crazy was this most of the tension was on Ron, the father, and not like everyone forgot about the son.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, he didn't do anything. I was like, it's like, I don't know, maybe that's like what this wasn't like a law back then, but like that's kind of like assisted murder.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't like do anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like kind of annoyed that like I guess like since they pleaded guilty, there was like a plea bargain. So then they kind of like got an easier kind of punishment. So they didn't really have to like go to jail. And the judge was kind of on their side because they only even listened to the defender's story, like not even the police
Right?
or like
Oh
the
my
other
gosh.
dancers or
Yeah.
yeah. Like the family members didn't even know that there was going to be a trial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Or the officers or the witnesses. They were like, we
Yeah.
weren't informed. I was like, what do you mean you weren't informed?
um, I don't know if maybe because like the police officer was like black, so I don't know if that took into place, but like he said like, oh, I didn't even know that there was something going on, and as a witness to what happened, I should have been called into court about like to testify like, what happened or something, but they didn't.
And
He
an
didn't. He was called.
authority. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was an authority of the law. He should have been informed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I really like that judge was getting on my nerves on watching him.
yeah.
Especially when he said that it wasn't a brutal murder. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
not a brutal murder. His brain was on the streets.
Yeah.
They said it was on the
That's
streets
horrible.
after they freaking beat him up with the bat.
Yeah, and even though like he was brought to the hospital, like there was nothing the hospital could have done. I think in the video, there's like the nurse said like, yeah, he's here, but he's like basically dead
Yeah,
already.
he's brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
And
like,
also
oh, go ahead, so my bad.
the presiding judge, like the reason why he said that he could only listen to the defender story was that he had to listen to over 2,000 cases a year and he didn't have time to hear the other side. That's what he said in an interview. And I was all like, are you serious? That's like such a
He said,
stupid
yeah.
excuse.
He said
Right.
50 cases
He
a
said
week.
50 a week, yeah.
Right? I was like,
Like that's no excuse to why
Uh-huh.
he gave him just like probation. It was horrible.
probation and a 3,000 fine. That's it.
And then yeah.
So
And
it's supposed to be a
it was
15-year
really
jail.
the judge's like decision on it. What's up?
I think you
Sorry,
were
what?
breaking up.
Me or
Oh,
No, I think
Patricia.
Patricia.
Oh yeah, my internet was unstable. My bad. They were all good.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say that like the judge's decision saying that oh Ron and the son like they didn't have any priors and they had working jobs, so they decided not to like put him on like 15 years of murder, which I thought was really stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about the fact of how does socioeconomic issues relate to racism? Let's move on to that question. How do you guys it relate? How do you think it relates to racism?
I wasn't really sure if it was talking like specifically about the film or just like in general, but I wrote down that how like if they're like minority groups, then they would face a lot of racism, or if individuals had like low education or their economic status were kind of low, then they would also face racism. But specifically in the film, I think it was like the unemployment, which was a socioeconomic issue, because it talked about there was a hunger crisis in 1982, and then unemployment hit 18%, and the Japanese were blamed for it because they were considered a major source. Oh, wait, because they had the most protectionist economy in the world. So then they were kind of like targeted, but I wasn't really sure like if it was talking about in general or in the film.
For me, after you said that with the whole like hunger crisis thing, I thought of how Americans didn't want to use like Japanese cars or Japanese built cars. Would that count as a socioeconomic issue?
I think so.
Yeah, because
Because I
like
think that's why their unemployment
yeah,
rate hit that.
yeah, they were making like commercials or something like that, and like these people were breaking up the cars made by Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like putting on the news and everything. Like a bunch of people were just hitting a car with a baseball bat.
Yeah, so I think that was one of them.
Yeah, and I think the commercial said like not to support like the Japanese Americans and then that's why they started beating up the car.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have anything else to say about the film? Kind of like background or whatever.
Um,
We can go on to like what scenes, I guess.
By the way.
The optional question.
Oh wait, no, we haven't answered number 2 yet.
Oh, what was number 2?
Sorry.
I see.
Yeah,
No, you're
number
good.
2 is asking, though the term Asian American was introduced in 1968 and didn't catch on till 1982 with the killing of Vincent Chin, how and why did the killing of Vincent Chin invigorate the Asian American consciousness and Asian American studies, which happened over 10 years prior to his death? So for me, I think like his death invigorated, the Asian Americans was a consciousness because like it was a wake up call for everybody, in the Asian communities that like what happened to him could happen to literally anybody who's Asian or half Asian, because like there's still people out there who discriminate them and doesn't like them and want them like out of the country.
Yeah. Adding on to that, it said in the film that at an early age they were kind of warned not to get involved, especially in politics. So they were like kind of confused on like why they shouldn't be getting involved, and they were kind of reluctant to speak out because they were minorities, and they were learned to just do nothing and accept whatever is given to them. And I think after the Chin incident and how he didn't get the justice he deserved, like Asian Americans were kind of more aware of the situation and that like the system failed and it wasn't on their side. So they're like, oh, we need to kind of make change right now.
Yeah, it kind of brought like some sort of unity within the community, because they like you were saying, they just realized like how much was going on and that they needed to make a change and everything.
Yeah, and I think the mom of Vincent Chin, the husband, was in the army for America. So it's like he did like his service for American, and that should be like an honor to the family. But it wasn't in this case because they just brutally beat his son for no reason.
Right.
Also, I feel like his death to me kind of showed like it was like a whole new fight for Asian Americans, to prove that they're part of America, they're part of this nation, they deserve to be here and be treated equally as much as they are. Like with all the rallies that they had, prior to his death. What about the Asian American studies? How do you guys think that led, or his death kind of led to that?
Like I said earlier, like it brought unity within the community. So they kind of realized like, okay, we need to teach people about this, and like we need to inform them that don't make these mistakes and don't prejudice these people just because of what they look like.
And especially since like the classes they were taking didn't have those kind of information, like the background of Asian Americans and the history of it, they were kind of more aware of the situation, and it made them more conscious that like they needed to fight, and they needed to like add those kind of studies into the courses so that their generation, future generations know like what was going on.
Yeah, and I think it was like what Patricia said. It was a wake up call, because like it's different when you're reading it like a book and like taking notes on it, but then when you see it like firsthand, it's like totally different. So I'm pretty sure like it just woke them up.
Yeah. And kind of like what just recently happened with George Floyd, it brought like a unity within like a lot of people, like not just Black people, but like Asians and like white people. So like everybody kind of came together to like go against that and everything.
Okay, now we're good. Come back.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to what themes or scenes in this film stood out to you.
A thing that stood out to me was when they were talking to the mom, and she was like, she was crying and she was saying that nobody even told her. She waited till like I think she said 6 the next day. She was waiting for him to come home, but he never came home, and nobody ever told him. I mean, nobody ever told her. Like, I just thought that was so messed up, and like, oh my gosh.
And the fact that he was getting married 2 days,
Yeah,
before that, I
So
was like,
bad.
didn't he go out to get the ring fixed?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
yeah,
bride.
yeah. It's
I
because
was like,
I think the mom said that she kind of like gained weight, so they had to like mess up with the
fix
ring and stuff
it.
like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. You should have listened to her when she said not to go out.
Yeah,
I
that was
know.
so sad.
Yeah.
It was like she warned him.
I
Like
feel like it
it's
was
like
like
kind
a
of she
mother's
knew something was
instinct.
gonna
Yeah,
happen. Yeah.
that's so sad. What
Well,
other
this
themes
episode,
or themes stood out to you guys?
Honestly, I just thought all of the scenes with like when they were interviewing, I think Evans, those scenes kind of just pissed me off because he was like making excuses for why he did it. He was just like, "Oh, I don't remember anything. I was drunk." But then when they were talking about how like his motivation was based off like racial kind of stuff, like he was all like denying it and all. So he
Right?
was like, I don't remember anything. But then he like kind of was like, no, I didn't do it based off like racial motivation.
Yeah. He said, "I'm not racist. I've never been racist. God is my witness," or something like that. That's a total lie.
and I think one of the I think it was an Asian girl was I was interviewing. They said that
Oh,
yeah,
Helena, I think that's it.
he had like he said he was drunk, but then when the Asian girl was saying like oh he was never tested for like what was in his system, and then like the guy was saying like oh it didn't even like matter in the case, like we didn't even have to test like his alcohol level, but people said he was drunk, so that's like a very good cause for him doing something like that. He would, and then like that would be something like he's not in his right mind, but throughout the whole film a lot of people said he was in his right mind, he knew what was going on.
Yeah, that's true. And also for me, that really stood out was the judge. I hated the freaking judge. Like we already mentioned
Yeah,
it
he was
earlier,
horrible.
but oh, I cannot. I just I don't like him. He just made me
Like,
mad.
it doesn't make sense how you don't have time when that's the job you chose to do. And
Yeah.
as like a judge, you should want justice for everybody. So you can't just beat around the bush and be like, oh, I don't have time, and it's an easy case. Like, no, you have to, like, that's your job. You're supposed to dissect like the whole case and see who's guilty or not.
He was probably just making excuses because he was probably racist. Like he wanted the white guy to win and not to just get on probation and everything.
And the mom was like saying, it's only because we're Asians. If we weren't Asians, then like the situation wouldn't be like this. So which she was right. So the movie was so sad. So very, very made me angry. I didn't like how the fact that they spent a lot of time interviewing the Ron and Michael instead of the mom more. Because I feel like for me, most of the time it was just them with their side and their history instead of just explaining like Ron's side or his mother's side. Yeah. You guys
And
got any
after
other...
like
after
like the trial was like officially over, and he was like, both of them were found not guilty, so they were free of criminal charges. Evans had like a kind of little interview after, and he was talking about how the system worked. He quote system worked the way it should have worked, which kind of angered me because he shouldn't have deserved to be free of criminal charges, because that was like a murder and that is not okay. But he was let off so easily, which is extremely unfair.
Right, and like when he said that, he was like smiling and laughing after. So it's like,
and even if like there's like no real evidence, like there's no for sure answers. So even if it was like on a based on a racist cause or it wasn't, it was still a murder. So no matter what, he still should have gone to jail and like paid his time.
Yeah, it was just a judge, not brutal murder. Sorry, it's just...
Okay, so now I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sorry, my internet kind of has been lagging.
After watching the film and like looking at all the evidence,
it's okay, you're good.
What do you guys actually do? You think he did it like because he's a racist, or it was just so happened that the guy he beat up was a Chinese person?
Both.
Racist.
You think racist?
I honestly have no idea.
No, because there's no excuse on why he had his son hold him down too. Like that just adds on. Like, why did he have to do that? You know.
And he only like pushed him
I just
down.
think it's
yeah. That's sad. Wait, when did this happen? I don't even know when this thing happened.
Yeah, your Wi-Fi cut out. We don't know what you said.
Oh shoot! Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I was asking like when did this thing happen? Like when did he die?
Oh, this was like, I think like
1982. There we go.
1982. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Oh yeah, it
I
says
just searched it up. I searched it up. Yeah, June 23rd, 1982. Okay, that's sad. Right.
I think it wasn't based on racial.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think it was just so happens that the person he beat up was a Chinese man. Because even though it wasn't a like Vincent Chin like hit him like on the back of the head and then left, like it's not a good enough cause to kill someone. But I think that's a better enough cause than because he's like a Chinese person. That like his motivation was just to get back at a person who hit him on the head. It was like getting revenge, and he did have stuff in his system. So it was just like I'm gonna just hit this man because he hit me. And I don't know if it was true, but he did not have any prior racial charges, and his place was set up in like it wasn't in a like rich neighborhood, so it was like kind of in the ghetto, and there was a black dancer, so that means he kind of wasn't racist. If he was racist, then he wouldn't have held like all his dancers would be white. So I don't think he was the the killing of Vincent Chin was racist, but was like a racial case.
Mm-hmm. I never thought of it that way. With the dancers,
Yeah.
that's a good point too. Good job for bringing that out.
And I think the only reason the the mom like made it to be a racial case was because there was no justice for his son. Like if it was that he got the father and son got 15 years, it would have been like done. But since they got off left so easy, they like had to make it a racial case.
Yeah. So you agree when they said that the media made it into a racial case?
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, have any other last things to say?
No, I think that's cool.
Okay. Did you guys like the movie though? This last one before we stop.
I liked it. It was
Yeah.
I think it
interesting.
just really triggered me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like the film, but it was informational because of like
Mhm.
what
I
happened in
agree.
the film.
Yeah. Okay. Just say bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.